So now to the main event. I feel like someone announcing the WWE here. As mentioned, as Steve mentioned, all the offices coming up, and this is the first time I can recollect in a while that we have all the offices except for the secretary are being contested for the state party this year. And we're pleased to have three of those candidates, including one who's being represented by Dr. Richardson. Dr. Richardson is up in Philadelphia right now for the DNC meeting. So what we're going to do is I'm not going to bother introducing each one. I'm going to let them do that themselves, give them about 5 to 7 minutes each to introduce each other, but also give a synopsis of what their vision for the state party is. And then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So I'm going to go by alphabetically. So I'm going to start with Clayton and let her introduce herself. And you can take the cue from the applause there, Clayton. So.
Hello, everyone. Can y'all hear me okay? Is this good? My name is Anderson Clayton. I use she, her pronouns. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Thank you all for what you do for the Wake County Democratic Men's Club. It was a really interesting invite, I thought, when I got that, because I didn't realize we had a men's club, honestly, in Wake County. And now I know. And Ruth used to be the first woman chair of the Democratic Men's Club here. So I was very excited to hear that, too, honestly, and throughout my phone calls that I've made to folks in this process. I come from Person County, North Carolina. It is a rural county that is about an hour north of here. It is 40,000 people probably, and a plus 20 for Trump County, honestly, to be real with y'all. It's a very red rural county. And for me, one of the things that was something that I believe really strongly in is that every county across the state deserves to have an organized operation in it. And one of the things that I've done this past year is when I took over the Person County Democratic Party chair, I was in 2021. We had municipal elections that year, and it was the first year that we ever got involved with county politics. And the Person County Democratic Party flipped the Roxborough City Council from red to blue. First time in history that it happened. And while it deserves applause, it also doesn't at the same time, because it was the first time the county party had ever gotten involved with those races, where 51% of the city of Roxborough is Black. And that to me is the reality, is that our county parties and our state party, to me, honestly, has left out and ceded ground in rural communities that we could be operating in year round and actually seeing the opportunity to strike in those communities, and especially in nonpartisan races. We need to be involved everywhere, particularly at the community level. I was talking to my mom yesterday and I said, my number one problem with the Democratic Party right now is that folks can tell me everything about George Santos and the counties that he represents and what he did or did not do in high school, but they cannot tell me who the 5 people that represents them on their board of county commissioners are right now. And that's my problem, is that if we're a party that says that we care about our communities and we care about our own backyard, then we need to show that, and we need to show up in our communities, and we need to be those local voices, and we need training on how to do that. My background is in national campaigns. I was an Iowa caucus organizer for Kamala Harris. When she dropped out, I went to work for Elizabeth Warren right after that because I believed in getting a woman in the White House. No offense to my men's club here, but that's just the reality of it. And I believe in that dream still. But one of the things that I was really excited to do and excited to learn is the opportunity of how to build an operation and build a grassroots energy and give people that energy and make them see that it is possible to organize everywhere. And that's really what I want to do with this state. 51% of North Carolina lives in a rural community right now. Anytime that we're ceding that ground means we're ceding those votes. We can't win statewide without it. 74 counties swung to the right this year. 45 counties, lost a Democratic representative this year. The other 55 really didn't have a Democrat to lose, to be honest with y'all. And to me, Sherry Beasley should be a United States Senator from North Carolina. And for me, that means that we needed to get young people to the polls this year. We needed to energize Black and brown communities across our state. And we needed to have done that from uptown Charlotte to rural Nash and Edgecombe counties. And we didn't do it. And it's a reality of looking at ourselves as a party and saying, what are we going to elevate? What are we going to do? And are we going to stick with the status quo from here on out? Or are we going to go forward and are we going to accept change? And are we going to bring young voices and people that have new ideas into this party and elevate them in it? Because I believe that's what we need to do. So I'm really thankful to be up here with you all, fighting alongside you all. I tell folks, regardless of whether or not I win this race, I'm gonna be in rural North Carolina next year, whether that is me as a state party chair or just Anderson Clayton. Like, I want to be able to do good things for rural Democrats because I believe this party has a message for rural North Carolina. And I truly want to be the person to deliver that. So thank you all for your time and your energy and everything else.
You can sit like that way. Easier. The next candidate I'm pleased to announce is Eric Terashima, and he comes all the way from Brunswick County. So Eric, you step up and introduce yourself and tell what your vision is.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out here. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate you taking the time. My name is Eric Terashima, and I spent 30 years in the Marine Corps. My first duty station in '92 was here at Camp Luzerne. Originally from Southern California, went to school at Notre Dame, and got a commission from a Naval ROTC scholarship. In '97, I left active duty and came here to Raleigh to work for John Deere Company. Started off on my corporate career when I had gotten done with my initial stint on active duty. After they bounced me around the country, 9/11 happened, and I was in the first wave of mobilizations right back here to Camp Luzerne. I stayed on active duty ever since then. And part of why I tell you this is I had visions after a 30-year career, retiring as a colonel, of being a hermit and buying a little place in the countryside and just kind of being on my own to golf and fish to my heart's content. But politics over the last 10 years has changed drastically. And the one that hurt me the most, frankly, was January the 6th. Our democracy is absolutely at stake. It is at risk, and we need Democrats to stand up and take it all back. We need to have it back in our hands. When we talk about my 30 years of service, 12 deployments, 8 combat tours, no one should doubt my level of patriotism. None of us should doubt our collective patriotism. We are all patriots. That's why we're here. That's why January the 6th hurt so much and why I felt it absolutely critical that I got involved personally to help turn that tide. We got to do better. When I look at the North Carolina Democratic Party, it looks broken to me. And when I say it looks broken to me, it's not easy to communicate internally. There's like some super secret higher being that has the keys of the kingdom of, I can't get your phone number. I can't get your email. Even if we know each other, it's challenging to get a hold of each other. Let me tell you, when I first joined the Marines in '91, I had a phone book and a rotary dial phone. Most of y'all remember those, right? I could reach any Marine anywhere in the world in 3 phone calls. That's it. That's how easy it was. The fact that we can't do that in our own party, I don't know how to call a caucus president. I don't know how to call a district chair, for example. It's not easy to do. That's utterly ridiculous. We need to have smooth internal lines of communications. If we can't communicate smoothly and efficiently and effectively amongst ourselves, how are we supposed to do that out in the community with the people who are voting? We got to fix that first. That's our own internal house. That's the very first thing. It comes down to leadership and reorganization. That's my forte. 30 years of leadership all around the world. I've traveled to over 40 countries. I've been all over the U.S., only missing 3 states so far. But I've organized these different entities across the Marine Corps, across international lines, including our partners overseas, and I've done it across the U.S. as well. That's leadership. Each time you go into an organization, there are different inefficiencies that are built in. And I'll give you an example on the manpower model for the Marine Corps. Someone enlists, most people only do 1 tour, about 75%. They go to school and boot camp, they come out, they go to a unit. They train with that unit, deploy, come back, go to another unit, train, and deploy. That's how we get the most out of 4 years out of these folks. It's 2 deployments. Knowing that you do that, that means each time you go to a unit, it's brand new. You got to build the wheel all over again. That's what I'm seeing here with the North Carolina Democratic Party and why I want to affect that change. Leadership, organization, communication, that's what we need. Thank you for your time.
the other candidate we were supposed to have tonight is Barbara Richardson, who is our current state party chair, but there is a DNC meeting occurring up in Philadelphia. So she looked for a representative, and she picked an excellent representative in Henrietta Corsi. She is former president of Democratic Women in Wake County. And so now she's going to come up here and speak on behalf of Dr. Richardson.
Thank you so much. I could really just go on and on tonight, and I probably wrote too much because I think that we are fortunate and very blessed to have the chair that we have, Dr. Bobby Richardson. And as Henry just mentioned, she could not be with us tonight because she's doing what she does so well. She's representing our state, our Democratic Party, at the Democratic National Committee meeting, which is taking place this entire week. She's talking about us and what we do and what we have accomplished. I can talk about Bobby from not only my experience as a former or past precinct chair that I also founded, helped to found and organize in Wake Forest with the help of this gentleman sitting right there at the table. And I can talk about Bobby as a past president of Democratic Women, as an SEC member, as the current chair of the Minority Affairs for North Carolina Democratic Party. And I can tell you that there has not been an occasion in my experience as a loyal Democrat, going all the way back to being a young Democrat in New York City, Brooklyn, when I started as a Democrat at 12 years old under the knee of my mother and father. There hasn't been a time that I have not been able to get a response on a question, on an issue, on something that is happening in my particular area, or to get a response or to discuss strategy about what is it that we can do to make our party better. So on behalf of Bobby Richardson, I bring greetings and thank yous to the Wake Democratic Men's Club for your years of service to the party and all the hard work that you have done to help elect Democrats, and for being a voice and activist for the policies and values that the Democratic Party stands for. So Bobby wanted me to say that, and for me to give you this. Thank you. You can clap for yourself, it's absolutely okay. Bobby also wanted me to express that being state party chair has given her the unique and once in a lifetime opportunity to meet so many people from all over the state. We have a candidate who talked about rural North Carolina. I can tell you from a personal experience, and maybe some of you too can attest to this. I would call headquarters and say, can I speak to Bobby? I'm sorry, she's not here. She's traveling to a county outside of Wake County. She made specific efforts to be visible in areas in Wake County to help grow and organize our party, and also to be able to talk with Democrats throughout the state. Bobby is running again for chair because she knows that we are resilient and we are strong. We've had some defeats, but we've also had some successes in 2022. Let's talk about that. Maybe I should ask you, what are some of the successes we had in 2022? We have 7 Congress people representing us, correct? So we gained 2 seats. What else? We were able to deploy year-round training and support to our candidates and our county parties. The North Carolina Democratic Party did that. We engaged in community involvement, holding countless listening sessions throughout the state. Now, the key word there is listening. Made every effort to do as many listening sessions as possible. Did rapid response and accountability in terms of communication and messaging. Hundreds of hours of volunteers devoted their time and their energy in 2022 to bring about the results that we achieved. Wasn't done just by the party, it was done by the unifying organization that existed. Vote Builder was provided at no cost for all our municipal candidates statewide. Offered Mobilize, Vote Builder, Ballot Ready, slate cards, strategic planning, supported our counties in getting the message out about our candidates that were running. Bobby brings to us as chair 30 years of a wealth of experience. She's tried, she's experienced, and she's loyal. We cannot do it alone. We need a chair at the top that knows, that has the experience, that has gone around the country so people know who she is, knows North Carolina, can speak for us, and can get the job done, where you bring in the fundraising and all of the things that we need in order to make our Democratic Party viable. So I'd like to end that Bobby knows what you do. She knows what the auxiliaries do, what the caucuses do, what every single county does. How does she know that? Because she started there. I put my faith, and I hope that you will too, in a candidate that has worked almost every single level within the party and has a heart and soul and loyalty for what we stand for. Let's continue to take action, working together to bring about results together and onward to a blue North Carolina. We did it in 2022 in the midst of many, many difficulties. So you can imagine without those difficulties, the pandemic, all the things that were in the way, what we can be able to do in 2023 and 2024 under the leadership of Dr. Bobby Richardson. Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to turn this over to you. So, questions? Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. I'll take the gentleman back in the back. He had his hand up first.
Yeah, my question would be for all 3 candidates.
Speak up a little bit.
Okay, sorry. Sure, my name is Joe Cicero, my first time here. And I need to register after the meeting, to become a member. My question is, what should the Democratic Party do to engage college students and young people to get them involved with our activism?
You want to take that first?
Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf, because I'm not Bobby Richardson, but I can only speak on what I know as past president of the Democratic Women of Wake County, my involvement in the area that I live in, an SEC member and a loyal Democrat. We have organizations within our party. We've got the Young Democratic Men. We've got within the Democratic Women of Wake County and on the state level, we have young women that are a part of our auxiliary organization. We have the African American Caucus, which is another great place for people to step in. In terms of things that on the grassroots level, on the local level, that can be done at the precinct level, it is at that level that you need to engage with young people. So I can only talk about what we've done in my area. We visited the high schools. We have participated with other organizations to talk about what we stand for and to encourage young people to join us. We have gone to the boys club, the girls clubs, so if you're engaged in your community and you are active in your community, that endears young people to say, oh, okay, this is what the Democratic Party is doing. Why don't you come and join us? That would be some recommendations that I would make that has worked for us in my little area.
Eric, and then Anderson.
So I'd like to make a couple of points. One is, yes, we need to leverage the caucuses, but what I would like to see is more synergy created amongst them. So for example, I'd mentioned how difficult it is to try to get a hold of folks and figure out who's doing what to whom, where, and why. If you have access to the teen caucus, for example, which we don't have in my area, people of color, whether it's AAPI or whether it's African American community or Native Americans, all these different groups seem to be acting individually throughout the landscape as I look at it. And what I'd like to see is more synergy and coordination, starting with districts, counties, and the caucuses all at the same time, if you're going to be able to go into schools, if you're going to be engaged on that level. In some areas, you can't do it. So for example, in Brunswick County, we cannot go into Brunswick County Community College, a good source of young folks. We're verboten to have any sort of partisan politics on that college campus. So how are we going to try to crack that nut? What I would like to see at a state level to make a big difference is a social media task force. That's where a lot of the younger folks are. They're exclusively, in some cases, on Twitter, on TikTok. Some of the older folks are on Facebook. But when I say this, I want to make sure that it's clear. This is not exclusive of the other traditional methods. We must do canvassing. We must do face-to-face. We know that that's the most effective. And what I'm proposing is that we try to do both to the max extent possible. But we have to get out and get our message out through as many different venues as possible. And so what I'm suggesting is take your quiver and put a lot more arrows in it to try to leverage every single different piece of media, whether that's face-to-face, in-person, town halls, canvassing, postcards, phone calls, etc. We need to get all of it because different people are going to have their switches flipped through different methods and means. Thank you.
Can y'all hear me okay if I talk like this?
Yeah.
Aha, okay, great. Fun fact, HBCU turnout was the lowest it's been since 2010 in the state of North Carolina this year. And that to me was when you had a black woman running at the top of the ticket. And in my opinion, that's because we were not on those college campuses directly talking to those students about where they needed to get out and vote. A&T it's gerrymandered, right? There's a line going down through the center of that campus, which has half students on one side, half the students on the other. They go vote in two different places. Somebody needs to be directing those students that's what's going on around them. I got registered to vote for the first time by the Watauga County Democratic Party. They were on Appalachian State's campus, and in 2016, they sued the State Board of Elections to keep that voting site on that campus. And in my opinion, it comes down to whether or not a county party and also a party is willing to fight for young people and their rights in this party. And for me, I got to see a county party that instead of taking their money and buying mailers, honestly, that year, they took their money and they said, we're going to hire lawyers and we're going to sue the State Board of Elections to keep that voting site on this campus. And they did. And they won that lawsuit. And that was Watauga County. That wasn't Orange County. It wasn't Durham County. It wasn't any of my other counties that are much larger, but it was the mountains. And I tell people that because I'm like, those ideas and those ability to fight, honestly, is what I want to see throughout our party everywhere. I think we need to show back up on college campuses. We need to make sure that our teen Dems, our college Dems, and our young Dems actually have a pipeline to get involved. I've talked to the Teen Dems president, Sarah Muir, this year, and she's really excited about the opportunity to engage more young people in this party and bring them into the fold, but she doesn't really understand how. Like, how do we talk to people about where young people can fit in? And I think that's a really cool opportunity for us to hopefully cultivate in the upcoming years, like 100 different young folks. It would be cool if we could source one for every county party and be able to assign them to it and actually work with them and give that for their college resumes and things like that, actually build up young folks' opportunities in this party. And so for me, I think it comes back to really cultivating an opportunity for people to get involved and also telling young folks, like, we understand right now why you feel being pushed out, because to be honest with you, the Democratic Party message, it's kind of falling flat right now. A lot of people come up to me all the time on this campaign trail and they go, what is the message of the party? Eric, I'm gonna take it from him because he said it in the last forum that we had, honestly. He said the message of the party is to get involved. And I said it earlier when I was talking up here about getting involved in your own backyard and what you need to know. It's exciting for young folks to feel like they have power, and what better way to give them power than at that local level and to show them what's possible when you can make change. And we're training you to be a young organizer in your community. I'm 25 years old and I live in a rural county because I want to. I want to make it better. I want to live there for the remainder of my life. And people ask me all the time, how are you doing that? and I'm just like, because it's what we should be doing. It's what we should be telling young people. There's opportunities for you to come back to places that look like this and ways to make them better and make them so that people can live there for the next 50 years, because I believe they deserve to. So thank you all for that question.
Yes, thank you for that question. As someone who's made the round of auxiliaries, I've done every one of them except for Democratic women, so I do appreciate that. So, John, you had a question.
Well, I'm interested in, you've already expressed some of the ideas, but since 2022 was a disaster for the state organization, we lost every statewide race we could lose. We lost many House seats that we shouldn't have lost. What do we do to prevent that from happening again in 2024?
So I'm going to go in reverse order and start with Anderson.
Yeah. We left 44 seats uncontested this cycle. We left the most seats uncontested in the North Carolina State Senate history. And that to me is where we start. Contesting every race right now is not only an ability to get people out to vote. Honestly, it's also a money saver for the party. And we know that now. Republicans have gone on the record and said, yeah, Democrats didn't run people in these districts. And we were going to take that money and just plop it into somebody else's own backyard, right? And that's where a lot of that came from. And I do believe that candidates this cycle, the folks that lost by 500 votes, needed to see more boots on the ground effort. They needed more volunteers and more energy. Right now, the Democratic Party is dying out. And I say that in the kindest way possible, but the pandemic did a lot to us. Most of our volunteers were 60 and 70 years old. They were retired age because, like, that's how you can get involved with the party right now. That's what it takes. You have to wait to that age to some degree, because there's not an opportunity to really, you don't have the time, honestly. That's the real part about it, right? You don't have the time to get involved sometimes until you're retired age. And I think that's also part of my problem with how we look at what's a way to get involved with the party right now. The idea and the energy that I think we need to inject in the Democratic Party is that there's a job for everybody. If you don't know what your job is, you come up and tell me what it is and give me that skill set and let me know what you've got to contribute to this party right now. I do believe that we need boots on the ground and people going door to door, and that energy just wasn't in our party this year. And we have to ask ourselves why. And that's not only just on the party, that's also on the type of candidates that we run, right? It's the type of energy that we have. But I think without local infrastructure, without that built up in every county, and at least the foresight and the ability to do that, we don't have that energy. And if we don't have it from the candidates, then we're relying on it from the party. And if the party is not there in those counties, we don't have it anywhere. So there's a lot of things to that, but I really do believe it involves getting more people involved with this party, more people recruited to run for office, to excite people on the ground, and contesting every race in this next 2024. So thank you for that.
Thanks, everybody. What I would like to offer in the simplest terms to answer your question is we must generate enthusiasm. And I'll give you a prime example. There's a virtual volcano of enthusiasm sitting right here to my right? That's what we need. My favorite example from the campaign trail that I saw last year was Jeff Jackson, one afternoon, puts on a Facebook post, hey, I'm going to the bar. Anybody want to join me? About 400 people showed up. You know what? That's what we need. That's the kind of enthusiasm we need. And that goes back to what Anderson just said about being involved, it comes down to empowerment. How many times have all of us in this room talked to folks that said to us, I don't vote. My vote doesn't count. Something to that effect. That goes back to empowerment. We need to let them know that yes, you can be empowered at your own choice. Come join us. Be part of us. That whole inclusion piece, that's going to help generate that enthusiasm. The more people that we can get to understand and appreciate that they are empowered, their voice matters. The Democratic Party is the vehicle by which we can make your young voice matter. That's what we need to do. That's how we get them involved. Make it fun. How about that? Something novel. Do the golf tournament, do dinners, do get-togethers, go to parades, go to town halls, what have you. But get involved with people, talk to them, listen to them, hear from them, just like you've heard the other folks say. But it all boils down to empowerment to generate that enthusiasm. Thank you.
I want to reiterate what we did achieve in a very difficult year.
Can we ask the speakers to stand up to the front?
Oh,
Yeah, that'll be,
okay.
we can get better.
I want to reiterate on our chair's behalf what we did achieve in 2022. 7 Democrats to Congress, maintaining the governor's veto, which is not something we want to look at lightly, and we flipped local seats. We're now in the process, Dr. Richardson wanted me to share, building the platform for the coming elections. That means exactly covering the seats that we need to make sure that we can have candidates running in the elections coming up. So they're working on that. When we look at the work that Dr. Richardson is doing, she is fighting very hard to bring the dollars that we need into the state party so that we can do the work that we need to be able to do. If you didn't know this, Sherry Beasley's campaign was outspent by $50 million. So when we talk about what it is that we need to do, fundraising, in addition to bringing in our young people, more of our young people, getting them engaged, not only in the young teens auxiliaries, the caucuses, not only getting out and talking within our own families and within our own communities to young people, but also valuing the people in this room, the seniors, the ones who have worked over the years, the ones who volunteer over the years. When you get a phone call saying, can you come out and do something? How many of you have gotten those calls? Okay, and we rise to those calls. So we want to help and work with the next generation to get them involved. The ones that are sitting in the back, the young teens, you're going to be in our place in the years to come, because the Democratic Party is the party of this country and will be the party in the years to come. And I wanted to also share that there was a lot of work done at the polls, that we had year-round voter protection. I don't know if you experienced anything in your precinct, but I did. And it was wonderful to have a phone call away that was set up for our party and within our county. We had issues in Wake Forest, but the voter protection system that was set up, that was done through the North Carolina Democratic Party and also through our county, helped to minimize those issues. So being engaged in the community, keeping our voice, being involved, and helping to build the next generation, Dr. Richardson is very much attuned to that. Thank you.
Rebecca, you have a question.
Before I ask any questions, though, I want to go back voter protection. There's the guy right there. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I'm Rebecca Llewellyn. I used to be the chair of Wake County. And, you know, Wake County, we're lucky we're a blue county. We've got a lot of Democrats here. But it hasn't always been like as easy as that. Wake County used to be very much a microcosm of North Carolina. I used to say we have Raleigh, Cary, and Ring of Fire. And we have worked for years and years and years to build an infrastructure. A lot of people have worked, volunteers, to build a strong infrastructure, to get organized, to turn out the vote, to work year round. Can that not be replicated at the state level? Now the Ring of Fire is very blue. We have turned entire town councils blue. So if we can do it here as our little microcosm over time, how can we do that at the state level?
And just with that, I've all of a sudden got Johnny Cash playing in my head about the Ring of Fire.
Sorry about that.
So we're going to start with Eric, and then we'll go to Henrietta, and then Anderson.
Okay, so to give you an indication of my age group, I actually thought of Social Distortion.
All right.
Right, something a little bit different, right? For Ring of Fire, they redid it, but they did a fantastic job. That's why it sticks with me. But what we need to do is not necessarily replicate what Wake County did, because each area demographically is going to be a little bit different. Yes, I do want to take templates from across the state, because what I've noticed is that different congressional districts do things differently. I just found out that District 11 holds a bi-monthly meeting. My district does not. If we're lucky, I see them like once a year, you know, and that goes back to the whole synergy piece that I want to try to create amongst the party. We're a bit disorganized in various areas. So yeah, take best practices like what we're seeing in Wake County, make a template, and then spread that across the state. Part of the difference is that most of our state is rural. Just like what Anderson was talking about, I live in a rural county. And to a large extent, I felt ignored by the North Carolina Democratic Party, both as a chair and as a candidate. We cannot allow that to happen. We cannot allow to have Democrats feel abandoned in the field by our own party. We need to show the love. We need to share the love. And so when we take this across the state, we have to have representatives, both from the state level as well as everywhere else, with all of us working together in concert. I can't tell you how many times in this last cycle I would get a phone call or an email. Hey, I'm coming in 4 days, Sherry Beasley. Like, really? Holy smokes. Or, hey, we are 2 weeks away from the general election. Here's some 4x8 signs. Holy smokes. You want me to deal with that right now when we're 2 weeks away from the general election? That's problematic. That's part of the lack of planning and organization that we need to have up front. And we need to understand that and plan backwards from it. It's not happening. And that's what I mean by I want to reorganize our party and what we're doing. It goes back to your question of how are we going to do this? Things are broken. So if you think there's things that are broken in the party and need to be fixed, what you have are candidates who are agents of change. That's what we want to do. And then you've heard from status quo. So if you're happy and satisfied, I would suggest, yeah, go with status quo. Great. If you want change, that's what I represent. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, you know, I think I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not Dr.
Can we have the person come to the lectern?
So, you know, at this point, okay, I'm at a disadvantage here. I'm doing my best to represent her because I believe in her. But I am at a disadvantage in answering this question. This is really a question for our leader and for the chair. But I would just kind of remind everybody that, you know, we live in North Carolina and we live in a state where the maps are constantly being redrawn and we have to react and respond to that. And so did our chair. And so did the leadership on the state party and every single county. I can only also say that, as many of you know, let me just ask you this. Raise your hand if you're on the SEC. Okay, so you know much of what we're dealing with because you're on the SEC. Raise your hand if you are a precinct chair or have been. Okay, so you know much of what we're dealing with because you're living it every single day and every single year. So you know in many ways that our chair is doing a yeoman's job and that our chair is committed to working with our House and State caucus to make sure that we do what we need to do in order to win the elections that we need to win. It's not done in a vacuum. It's done as a unifying effort. Again, I'm saying I'm at a disadvantage because I can't answer to talk about future directions because I'm not the chair. But my heart and my trust is with her leadership, and I'm proud to work with her. Thank you.
I think the best way to do that is to rebuild party infrastructure. I think for a long time we've gotten away from that as a party, and that's because for a long time in this state, and honestly back in 2010 when Republicans won on maps that were like that Democrats drew, right? The whole concept was that urbanization was going to save North Carolina, and that's not true. That's not our reality, and it doesn't need to be that way anymore. We don't need to act like it. We need to adapt our thinking. We need to mobilize, and we need to actually do what we know works, honestly, and take models from places like Wake County, but also from counties like, Transylvania County raises $40,000 every year. Like Sam Edney out there in the mountains, like doing his thing, and that's a rural county party who has had a really hard time, getting Democratic successes anywhere. Quite frankly, nowhere, but they still raise that money every cycle because they still want to be able to compete in Transylvania County. It's giving people that hope and that momentum that like competing everywhere is possible, and it should be because people everywhere are worth it. The thing that I tell people when I took over being Person County Democratic Party chair, I told folks, I said, I don't care if I don't win an election in this county. It's not about that for me, and it never was. I was really excited when I won a city council race. I'm not going to lie to you all in this room right now. Now that was a go time for me. But equally, I lost 2 county commissioner races this last year. So I know how it feels too to just give it your all and still get nothing out of it, but want to get back in the saddle and keep going with it. But I tell people, Karen and Stacy are 2 of the best Democrats that I know in Roxborough. They have lived there their entire lives. Karen is a Long, and people like to joke the only thing that the Longs own in Person County is the phone book because that's how many of them that there are in that county. And Karen looked at me and she said, Anderson, I don't feel like Stacy and I are going to be able to retire here, that we're going to be able to really like set up and settle down. Lived here her entire life, grown up here her whole life. And she looked at me and I said, why do you feel that way? And she goes, because I can't look over in the aisle at Tractor Supply and yell, hey, sweetie, at Stacy without covering my mouth like I just said a bad word. And she goes, and that's how I feel living in Person County. The aspect that the 2 of them in a relationship together could not be out and could not feel okay about that in a place where she has lived her entire life. And I took that and I said, that's my job as a party chair in Person County, is to make sure that people like Karen and Stacy don't ever feel like they have to be quiet about who they are and how they exist and how they live in this community. And if that is what we do across rural North Carolina in the next 2 years, I don't feel like I've done my job. I'll be honest with y'all. Because this party is more about just winning elections to me. It is also about people at the end of the day. And that's what I believe a party should be. So I believe it's about building infrastructure. I believe it's about getting and recruiting good candidates. And I believe in order to do that, we've actually got to show people that this party cares about them and wants to hear them in this party again. So thank y'all for that.
Okay, Seth and then Bill. Seth?
My question is about party governance. And from my perspective, one of the big problems with the party's ability to be nimble and responsive to change is that we have these enormous governing bodies in the state executive council and the state executive committee that are difficult to mobilize, they're difficult to organize a meeting for. A lot of party staff time is spent just in service of trying to plan and carry out those meetings. The last state executive committee meeting, we weren't able to establish a quorum for that meeting. So my question to you all is, from a governance perspective, A, I guess, do you agree with the premise that there needs to be some reform? And B, what specific reforms would you propose or support as party chair, or take the lead on as party chair, to try to make a more nimble and efficient and responsive state party organization? Eric and Anderson. Yeah.
I'm gonna get up and say this. Okay?
Yeah.
At this time, what I'm going to ask Henry to do, because I'm not Bobby Richardson, I'm not the chair. And you're asking questions that I think is unfair for me to try and answer. So what I'm going to ask that Henry do is to take your name and your question, if you could email him, your question and your name, so that that answer comes from her, because I can't answer that question. Thank you.
So, Seth, thanks for that question, right? I'm going to go back to, I have 8 combat tours. What does that mean? How does that translate to what we're talking about? Imagine yourself being on a ship with a couple thousand Marines with a few $100 million of equipment. And you are hundreds of miles out in the sea, and you get the order, hey, I want you to send 500 Marines and sailors into country X right now to go protect the embassy. That's happened to me, like literally, okay? You get this entire big unknown slate of what does this country look like? What does the culture look like? How many different people are there? How many different races are there? All this litany of questions that you're gonna have. How many people do I need to help? And most of it are open question marks. I don't know. The point of me saying all that is that I am literally an expert at building nimble organizations. If you're like most of Americans, I think what? Last time I checked the polls, about 85% of us believe that the US Congress is dysfunctional, right? Well, guess what? Our state executive committee is about 60% larger than US Congress. So yeah, just to give you the dose of reality of how things look, that's the kind of structure that we need. When we talked earlier about Wake County and how great it is, well, it's the biggest county in the state. Sure, there's templates that we can give or make off of that, but that's not going to translate really well to some place that has a county chair, maybe a secretary, and then the 3 straights who show up so that they can go, yeah, we're organized, right? There's a large disparity across the state that we need to capitalize on. And that's what I meant about trying to build in some of those middle level structures and some consistency across the board so that we can get those synergies and make our organization far more nimble. And frankly, I'm going to go back to this. The Marines, we arrange things in 3. If I'm Lance Corporal Terashima and I'm put in charge of a fire team, I've got 3 members of my fire team. If I'm Sergeant Terashima and I have 3 squads, I have 3 fire teams in my squad. So we're only individually doing 3 things at a time. That's the simplest model, right? As you climb up, it gets a lot more complex. But those are the models and organization that I'm used to working with and dealing with and rearranging and changing. So if you want change, if you believe change is important and necessary across the party, especially when it comes to communications and organization, then I should be the right candidate for you. Thank you.
The North Carolina State Executive Committee is the largest SEC in the entire country. I think that should be noted. I do believe that we need reform when it comes to actually narrowing down the people that are on that committee, simply because a lot of them don't know why they're on it. We need to, and that's really true. They kind of call themselves like backbencher SEC folks to some degree. Like they get elected at a county convention every 2 years, and they show up for a meeting every 2 years, or every 2 times every year as well. And so for me, it's making sure that we either, as a state party, train those folks on and train county parties on who they should be looking for to fill those SEC seats, because they should be people that are giving something back to the party at the end of the day, whether that mean in a county chair role, a precinct role, or in some volunteer capacity, in a financial role, honestly, but that they're not utilized. I think that a lot of things that I've talked about with folks on this campaign trail has been how we do not utilize the people in our party enough We live with a resource scarce mindset, and I think that our best resource as a party is our people, the connections that we have with each other, and the networks that we have on our own selves or within our own selves. And so, being able to share that with the party and calling on that more honestly as a party, and really trying to amplify that. So I do support reform in the SEC, at least with bringing that body down to a smaller size. What I will also say, though, to that point is that there has been several modernization committees that have tried to be made in the state or within the SEC before and about the SEC that have failed. And so I think that we've also got to go through a democratic process of figuring out, what does our party want to do as a whole to become more effective? And I think that does start with the state party leadership and a culture mindset at the top of that. We need to make those SEC meetings more effective for people. They need to really feel why they're there and getting something out of them, because a lot of folks have said, I'm tired of coming to SEC meetings. I don't want to anymore. And from what I've heard from people in the party, they used to be something that people wanted to drive the 6 hours to show up to, because they would see their friends and the folks that they hadn't in a while. And it was that camaraderie and that fellowship building that we had the opportunity to do as a party before. But it's lacking now. And I think that that's something that we can really rebuild again. But it's going to take time. It's going to take effort and a lot of energy from folks. So, yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Yes, as one person said to me when I got re-involved in the party about 10 years ago, there's more than one reason why they call the plan of the organization the poo. So anyway, so Bill, you've had your hand up a long time, so you go ahead.
I want to thank Henrietta, Eric, Anderson for coming out tonight. We really appreciate that. That's a big thing. I was a party chair in Gaston County. I get the whole rural, outside the island of blue stuff. It was dark red out there as well. I'm asking you this question. You've talked about infrastructure. Eric, I get that we need a decent phone book. I'm all for that. But the party is not without resources. And without question, the job is to go raise money and then deploy them. And you've mentioned infrastructure, which I'm a big fan of. What does that look like to you? How would you take the resources and deploy them? In addition to the phone book, would you spend some money and help some of these outlying counties have a year-round party headquarters, which would be nice? I don't know if it's a good use of money. Would you spend it so that we had 100 organizers in 100 counties? Or what's on your mind? What are you thinking in terms of pragmatic? Or would you use that to get volunteers from these islands of blue to go out into the ring of fire and help organize out there?
He's giving us all the ideas. He's taking our talking points, everybody.
Oh, I didn't hear him yet, but I want to hear something else.
So we're going reverse order. Anderson, Eric, and then Henrietta.
I was like, dock me some couple seconds for that one right there. But no, I think that one of the things that I go back to is I'm like investing in our people training. Right now, Julia Buckner has done an amazing job as an organizing and training director, but that job should not be twofold like that. There should be a training director and an organizing director, and there should be a staff under that training director. The biggest thing that I've heard from folks, if y'all look at organizations like Moms Demand Action, any group that's talking about like gun violence right now in the United States, they train their folks, their volunteers effectively and efficiently, because we have the capacity right now to do year-round organizing with our own people. There are, like, I've been a party chair, right? It's an unpaid job for the last 2 years in this role, but I'm also like, precinct chairs do the same thing, and they give that love of labor because they want to see the Democratic Party advance in their community. They want to see that happen, but they don't know how to sometimes. And I think it is really about investing in people and their ability to learn how to do a job and then go train other people to do it with them, and training the trainer in that effectiveness. I do believe it involves giving money to county parties as well. Right now, the SEC budget, or what we're looking at, is around $70,000. It's going to be allocated to county parties over the next 2 years. It's not enough money, right? Like, the sustaining fund dues right now that county parties pay into the state party is around $160,000. We're not even getting back the investment that we're putting into the state party in that capacity, and that's a problem. And it is a fundraising problem. I think right now, donors, what we're seeing across the state, or across the country at least, from what I've heard people describe, is donor fatigue, right? people want to see excitement in the Democratic Party. I've had so many people come to me since we started this campaign, and they're like, I love the energy. I love to see what y'all are doing here in North Carolina and what y'all are trying to do at least. And really, I think re-energizing donors to see that they have an ROI, honestly. And that also means showing up. I think that people don't donate to the state party right now, especially in our counties, because they don't see the Democratic Party in their counties right now. And that's also an aspect that the state party's got to take on and really do a better job of. So it's a lot of things, but I think the foundational piece of this party has got to be training our folks to do their jobs better. It's going to take a lot of money to get to having 100 organizers in every county, like an organizer in every county. That would be the dream. Like, that is the dream goal of this party. There should be a thermostat somewhere with or a thermometer somewhere with a meter of how much do we raise and how much are we getting there, because that should be a fundraising goal somewhere in our party, to really believe that every county is worth investing in having somebody in it. But thank you for your service as county party chair. It ain't an easy job, as we both know, so we appreciate it.
Thanks. So Anderson just touched on the key piece as far as the way I look at this problem set. And this actually kind of goes back to what Seth had asked as well. So you're kind of asking basically to hang some meat on that bone, right, that we had just addressed. The first layer that I'm going to talk about is the return on investment of our volunteer hours. As I look across this room, y'all have invested a couple hundred man hours collectively tonight alone, right? We multiply that across the landscape of North Carolina. How many of our volunteers are doing things, but they're doing it in a silo? They're not doing it in coordination with other folks. They're not synchronized with other members of other groups where they should have that kind of synchronization. So that to me is level one. And part of that comes into the disparity of the way the districts, the congressional districts, handle things differently. There's 14 of them. So if I go from NCDP down to 14 different organizations, what leverage can I gain by having those entities operate in the same or similar manner to each other? So I gave you the disparity of my district maybe meets once a year. That's not helpful from a middle management standpoint. What else can we do? I had mentioned that I would like to create a social media task force. That's going to be starting with volunteers. So when you talk about return on investment, that's less cost. Same thing with what I would like to do with communications. I would like to have a communications task force to help me get organized, because it's not as simple as a phone book. It's more than that. We have modern technologies that we should be leveraging to help get us synchronized across the board and be able to communicate easier amongst ourselves in an organized fashion. That's where what it really comes down to. Then when you go down of where do you spend the money? Well, we already all know the numbers. We know that face-to-face gets us the most return on investment when we're talking about trying to persuade people and trying to get out the vote. We know this. We know that mailers get us 1% return, right? Knowing all those numbers, where else can you go? And that's where I'm going to go back to that social media task force. When you talk about return on investment, advertising on those platforms gives you a great return on investment. So if you're going to spend your money anywhere, that's where I would like to spend a significant portion of it. Anderson had talked about year-round training. I love Julie. She's absolutely fantastic. If you haven't been around her, when I talked about this being a volcano of enthusiasm over here, Julia is too. We need more folks like that. And Julie's been doing it for a long, long time. And I find her just one of the most vibrant folks, and I love being around. So we need to take folks like that, like Anderson, like Jeff Jackson, and get those folks out into the public to help generate that enthusiasm, get us some of that buy-in. Thank you.
Again, I'm going to take this question back, but I would just like to add from something that I didn't say, and that is a reminder that we have so much that we receive, including the digital content packages. So if you look at the messaging that we're receiving from our North Carolina Democratic Party to help us in the field, that is a large part of assisting us in our communication.
Well, it's 8:07. We'll take one more question. That has to be it. So, David.
Quick question and then one comment. Question is this. What would you point to as the most significant thing that caused us to lose the two most important seats in this state that are the two seats off the Supreme Court? And the comment I want to make is I am really, as old as I am really impressed with the energy and the youthful vigor that I see. My question to you on that is, and I don't expect an answer to this right now, but the party is overloaded with old farts like us. And you've got to figure out a way, if you are elected, you've got to figure out a way how to get to the older heads and get them into your camp. Because we've got endorsements around here that aren't taking those things into account. You don't have to answer that, but I do want to hear about your position on the court.
Okay. Henrietta, I'll let you go first if you want to take that question.
I'm not going to take that question. I'm just going to kind of just end with this. Let me find it.
You won't come up here. It's a little bit louder up here where we can hear you.
Oh, okay. He reminded me that I did not share, and I want to end with this, that Chair Richardson is excited to have been endorsed by Governor Cooper, Josh Stein, Congressman Wiley Nickel, Congresswoman Deborah Ross, Congresswoman Valerie Fouché, Congresswoman Kathy Manning, and so many, many others, because they see the great job that she has done and that they have trust and they believe that she can continue to do a great job for us in the future. Thank you for allowing me to bring her message as a fellow Democrat.
Eric, and then Anderson.
Sir, could you repeat the bottom line question again, please?
I want to know what your assessment is as to why
Thank you.
we lost the two most important seats in this state.
Couple of reasons. The first thing is because of the partisan nature of the courts. That was a huge hit, right? Number one. Number two, Republicans showed up in larger numbers than Democrats. So I'm going to go back to that generating enthusiasm piece. That's what we absolutely must do. And I'll give you an example. And I'm going to kind of turn this a little bit sideways because it goes back to the Beasley campaign. I'm the Brunswick County Democratic Party chairman. And when the primaries were going, I reached out to every primary candidate at the state level that I could and asked them to come down to Brunswick County. You know how many came down? None. That's problematic. If you're going to lose across 3/4 of the state, geographically speaking, and you're not going to engage, that's a problem. And when I contacted the campaign, the first thing I said was, in 2020, you lost to Governor Cooper by 1,300 votes in my county alone. Well, guess what? Those 1,300 votes, had she been on par with Cooper, she would have been a Supreme Court justice. That's a simple fact. Then when I go back and I look at the data after 2022 closed down, she lost 3,900 votes from 2020 to 2022. This goes back to the disenfranchised voters. If we can't get our candidates to come out and meet people face to face to get them enthused about their own race, that's going to cause problems that we just saw. That's number one. Number two, what I would really like to see us do at a state level is help the candidates with packages, formal packages of all of us were all on our own. We were getting our own literature. We were getting our own yard signs. We were our own graphic design artists. Imagine if we took the muscle across the entire state's enterprise and brought that together in a collaborative environment, and then extended those to the candidates. Like, hey, Judge, you got a lot of stuff to do. You don't need to worry about X, Y, and Z because I'm going to give you a Chinese menu of all this stuff. Here's where you get your yard signs. Here's the media context. Here's how you do these things. And we need to do that across the board. And we need to do it regionally too, because what I'm finding is we've got little regional newspapers. Like, for example, in Brunswick County, my county has published letters to the editor at a rate of 2 to 4 times a week, every week since December. That's absolutely incredible. We can take that across the state to other smaller venues as well and keep it localized. Those are the kinds of efforts that I want to see have happen. And if we're going to want to get back and take our judiciary back, which we absolutely direly need, that was our biggest loss, in my opinion, this last cycle. If we want to do that, my brain is aimed at 2030. We need a strategic vision to take us out for the next 7 years. What are the building blocks that are going to get us there? So frequently you hear when we get to into these forums, people talk about, what are you doing for 2024? Well, that goes back to the instant gratification that a lot of us have as Americans. Like, I want it now. I can go to the store and I can buy this now and get rid of that instant gratification piece. But if we don't have a vision for the future, what we're going to look like in 2030 and build towards that, I think we're missing a key aspect of what we need to do as a state party. Thank you.
Justice Urban will tell you himself that yes, the partisan nature of the courts this year did not help them, but also the way that they ran those elections didn't help them either, to be honest. They ran like they would have if it was 4 years ago, honestly. And in my opinion, they shouldn't have done that. They should have ran as a Democrat. They ran as being really nonpartisan. They ran with being really middle of the road. They said, I'm a judge. I don't need to go to one side or the other. And I'm like, no, you do. You do right now because these races are partisan, and we need you to do that. Washington County was a county that Sherry Beasley, it's in northeastern North Carolina, right? It's a majority minority county. Sherry Beasley won it by 6 votes. Not 6 points, 6 votes. All of our judges lost that county. And I'm like, the coordination from those people, and I don't know if it was because, the judges were like, we don't want to, be a part of the coordinated from the United States Senate capacity in this. Like, that was maybe not what they wanted to do because they ran those races how they wanted to, right? So there's got to be an approach that we take as a party of that, no, these are all our people, and that center base needs to be coming from somewhere. And that, to me, is relying on county party strength. So that was number 1. Number 2, I just think the coordination. County party chairs can attest that, like, judges were out there getting out their yard signs by themselves. I'm like, that was a reality, and it was really hard for them to do. I think judges collectively made it to around, 45 counties each. They didn't make it to every one on their own, right? Judges were going out and representing before each other. It just doesn't seem like the most effective way to run campaigns, and I would be extremely interested to collaborate and coordinate with them better in the future on how we can really push them into the party and into the fold of that. And also when you think about raising money for judge candidates, in my opinion, there are PACs and there are other outside entities that come in for your United States House and Senate, and then also your North Carolina State House and State Senate, but there's not really one for judges right now that actually come in and help them with that side of things too. So really creating how are we going to run these races in the future, and not just at that Supreme Court level either, but also Judge Denise Hartsfield was someone that had been on the bench for 20 years. She lost her seat in Forsyth County this year. Should have never happened, in my opinion. Carla Catalin Day is somebody that ran for State House, also in Forsyth County, lost by 2,000 votes. Should not have happened this year. Ricky Hurtado, right? Less than 500, or around 500 votes, I want to say, maybe less than that. Should not have happened. Brian Farkas, 328, right? Should not have happened. Those are field margins. Those are the 3 points or less that we're talking about on a ballot every year, and that comes from the energy and excitement of getting people out to vote, as Eric talked about earlier, honestly. I think that's really what we're trying to do here. And something that I tell people all the time is this is an opportunity for the Democratic Party to really look at itself and rebuild itself. And I think that's really cool. I think it's the most amazing experience that we can have right now, and I'm excited about doing it, whether or not I'm in this role. I tell people too, I have a lot of respect for Chair Richardson. This race is not about being against one person in this. It is about being against the way that we have consistently done things year after year after year, and the need for change and the desire for it. So if you agree with that, if you want to see that, I really think there's an opportunity to put that perspective in charge of this party. So thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight. I really appreciate it.
So, No more questions, I'm sorry. Can you speak a little bit louder, Robert?
I said, can I have 2 minutes? Thank you.
Start.
Thank you. I was simply say to all of y'all, we're in serious trouble. This part. We have this tendency on soft pedestal. I remember in 2008, when the Democrats were running the state, the Republican Party, Tom Fest, took 2 years, but they did. For 2 years, they lied, they lied, they lied. Whereas in 2010, when they flipped everything, those lies became true, because they had been telling it for so long. We can't wait until an election starts 6 months out and try to start something. Here it is. We need to campaign 365 days a year for the next 10 years. Because I'm telling you, fact, we lost the Supreme Court. We lost the House. We lost that Senate, U.S. Senate. We lost the Senate. We lost some local elections. We got cream. And we can sit around and keep making believe like it didn't happen, but it did. And if we don't make some changes, we're gonna get killed again. And I'm telling you, 2024 is gonna tell the tale in this state. Because they have the Supreme Court, they got the House, they got the Senate, they're running the schools, they're running the universities into the ground. They are tearing this state apart. And if we don't start fighting back, then we're going there. And it will be 20 to 30 years before we get back. It ain't about the old folks, it ain't about the young folks. This is not about us individually. This is about us collectively. We can't keep operating inside of it. We gotta come together, cuss, fuss, do whatever we gotta do. But we gotta bring this thing together. And time right now is not on our side. So we gotta do this quick, fast, and in a hurry. Because like I said, we gotta campaign 365 days a year for the next 10 years. Because it ain't about us no more. It's about your children. It's about your grandchildren. And it's even about those unborn. And I'm damn from sit here. Because I've been involved in this 50 years. 50 years. I started in 1972 with Jim Hunt running for lieutenant governor. And I've been involved ever since. And I've never seen this party in the position that we are now, where we just give the hell up. We ain't got no fight. Those young people back there deserve better. We need to show them what a fight is. We need to take it to the Republicans' ass. And stop talking about it, but do it. Here, here.
So, very quickly, I'm Herb Harton with the North Carolina Democratic Party Labor Caucus. Tonight, I handed out some copies of this book. Cost you $20 at the book stand. It's called Runaway Inequality. It's by Les Leopold. I've read Krugman, Robert Reich, all the economists. This is the most succinct book on this subject. If you didn't get one, they're in a box by the door, and we'd love for you to take one free, from the Labor Caucus. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we conclude, I'm going to conclude tonight. We've talked about trying to involve young people, so I would honestly like to hear from some young people. So do you in the back have any thoughts that you would like to share with us?
Hi everyone, just introducing myself. My name is Anna Berger and I'm the president of the Wake County Teen Dems. Just first off, we want to thank you guys for having us here tonight. It's really great to get to hear from all of you who've been in this longer than we have. And I think a lot of what was said tonight has a lot of merit. I mean, I can speak for us saying that we know a lot of young people who want to get involved. And I think part of the challenges we're having is that, as it was said tonight, that we don't really know how. And so I think that's a big thing that we're trying to work on as a group. And so just for the future, if any of you in this room have any opportunities for us, we would love to get involved. And we're starting by doing that. We have a meeting this weekend, and so we're going to keep working on that, getting more young people involved, and look forward to working with you all in the future. All right.
So first, I'd like to give a big hand to the candidates and candidate representatives for being here tonight. Great questions tonight for the candidates. And please, if you are an SEC member, please attend. This is probably one of the most significant SEC meetings that we've had in quite a while. And as Robert said, that was a beautiful speech, Robert, so thank you very much. Politics is 24/365. I grew up with Jim Hunt as governor. In fact, I remember Jim Hunt as governor, Jimmy Carter was president. I mean, we literally did hold this state, and it has changed, and I would say it's not changed for the better. The vitriol, the Helms years, I mean, to me, Donald Trump is not the symptom, he's just the culmination of years and years and years of some of those abhorrent politics that anyone can imagine. If we're going to change it, we do need to be enthusiastic, not just being against something, but for something, for liberty, for justice, for fairness, for the people who clean our lawn, who break our leaves, who mow lawns, who work in the convenience stores, for the policemen, for the teachers, social workers. Those are people who feel left out. At one time, we were the party of the people, and we need to be that again. So, so we do need to be enthusiastic, and we need to find a way to, how can we reach out to the metropolitan counties, how we can reach out to the rural counties. And once again, at least be more competitive than we are now. Next month's meeting, because of the way February is on March 2nd. We will be here again at the University Club, and we will get you news about what we'll be discussing next. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the cause before we adjourn? If not, thank you all for showing up tonight, and see you next month.